It was the eve of Thanksgiving, November 24th, 1971. The Portland International Airport was bustling, filled with people rushing home for the holiday. Aboard Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, a Boeing 727 bound for Seattle, passengers settled in. The flight would be short, less than 30 minutes. Among the passengers was a quiet, middle-aged man. He wore a dark business suit, a black tie, and sunglasses. He bought his ticket with cash, at the counter, under a name that would soon become a legend, D.B. Cooper. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper lit a cigarette, ordered a bourbon and soda from the flight attendant, and calmly passed a note to a young stewardess named Florence Schaffner. Florence was used to lonely businessmen passing her their phone numbers. She smiled, and without reading it, slipped the note into her pocket. The man leaned in. "Miss," he said in a low, unemotional voice, "you'd better read that note. I have a bomb." Northwest Orient Flight 305 was no longer heading to Seattle. It was about to fly into the greatest unsolved mystery in American aviation history. This is the file on the man who hijacked a plane, demanded a fortune, and then vanished into the sky, like a ghost. Florence opened the note. The handwriting was neat, all in capital letters. "I have a bomb in my briefcase. I want you to sit next to me." Shaking, she did as he asked. Cooper was polite, almost gentlemanly. He didn't seem like a terrorist. He looked like an accountant. He calmly opened his briefcase, just enough for her to see inside. A tangle of red wires, a large battery, and 8 sticks of dynamite. It was not a bluff. He closed the case and dictated his demands. $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills, 4 civilian parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel. As the stewardess took the demands to the captain, Cooper put his sunglasses back on. He ordered another bourbon and paid for it. Throughout the entire ordeal, he remained perfectly calm, enjoying the view from the clouds. On the ground, the FBI and Northwest Orient scrambled. The airline president ordered full cooperation. The lives of the 36 passengers were on the line. In Seattle, FBI agents rushed to local banks, gathering the $200,000. They frantically photographed every single one of the 10,000 $20 bills. Meanwhile, local police were sent to a skydiving school to procure the 4 parachutes, unsure why the hijacker would need so many. For 2 hours, the Boeing 727 circled over Seattle, burning fuel. As the crew told passengers, there was a minor mechanical issue. Down below, in the dark, the demands were being assembled. At 5:45 p.m., the plane landed. Cooper ordered the pilot to park in a remote, brightly lit area of the airport, far from the terminal. He wanted the cabin lights dimmed to discourage FBI snipers. He was methodical. The exchange was tense. A single airline employee walked across the rain-soaked tarmac, carrying the heavy knapsack of cash and the parachutes. He delivered the items through the crew door. Cooper inspected the money and the parachutes. And then he made good on his part of the bargain. He ordered all 36 passengers to be released, along with Florence Schaffner and another stewardess. He kept only the essential flight crew: a pilot, a co-pilot, a flight engineer, and 1 stewardess. The first act was complete. The plane was refueled. But Cooper wasn't finished. He had a second act. He ordered the pilot to take off again, with a new destination: Mexico City. But he gave very specific flight instructions. Instructions that proved this was no amateur. The plane was to fly low, at 10,000 feet, maximum. The speed was to be kept as slow as possible without stalling, around 100 knots. The landing gear was to remain down. And, most crucially, the cabin was not to be pressurized. These were the instructions of an experienced pilot, or someone who deeply understood parachuting and aerodynamics. They were the perfect conditions for a high-altitude jump. But there was one final instruction, the most bizarre of all. He ordered the Boeing 727's rear ventral staircase, the air stair, to be left open and lowered during the flight. The crew protested. Taking off with the air stair open was dangerous, perhaps impossible. Cooper was adamant. The plane took off from Seattle at 7:40 p.m., with the staircase lowered, flying into a dark and stormy night. The flight crew locked themselves in the cockpit. The last they saw of D.B. Cooper, he was calm, tying the money bag around himself and putting on one of the parachutes. At 8 p.m., a warning light flashed in the cockpit. It was the sensor indicating that the rear air stair had been fully deployed. The plane was being battered by a vicious storm, flying low and slow over a dense, forested and mountainous region somewhere between Seattle and Reno, Nevada. Shortly after 8:13 p.m., the pilots felt a sudden jolt in the tail of the plane. The cabin pressure changed. The pilot asked over the intercom if everything was okay. There was no answer. D.B. Cooper was gone. He had jumped from a jetliner at night in the middle of a freezing storm with 200 mph winds into a rugged, mountainous wilderness with $200,000 strapped to his body. When the plane landed at the Reno airport to refuel, the rear air stair still gaping, it was empty. The only things Cooper left behind were his black tie, a few cigarette butts, and 2 of the 4 parachutes. The hunt began. The FBI codenamed the investigation NORJAK, Northwest Hijacking. It was the largest and most expensive manhunt in American history. Hundreds of Army soldiers, FBI agents, and local volunteers scoured the assumed jump zone for weeks, inch by inch. They looked for a man, a parachute, or a single trail from 10,000 $20 bills. They found absolutely nothing. The FBI investigated over 1,000 suspects. They interrogated combat veterans, smoke jumpers, career criminals. But D.B. Cooper had left no fingerprints. The name on the ticket was a pseudonym, taken from a Belgian comic book. The man in the dark suit didn't seem to exist. For nearly a decade, the case was a dead end. A perfect mystery. Until 1980. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was on vacation with his family, digging in the sandy bank of the Columbia River, near a spot called Tena Bar. He dug up 3 bundles of rotting $20 bills. It was $5,800. FBI agents raced to the scene. They pulled the serial numbers and checked them against the D.B. Cooper ransom log. It was his money. But the discovery didn't solve the mystery. It deepened it. The money was found miles away from the original jump zone, and it was disintegrating, suggesting it had been washed and deposited there by the river. How did it get there? Did Cooper land in the water and drown? Did he bury the money and never return? The question that remains is, did he survive? The FBI has always maintained publicly that the jump was impossible, that no human could have survived the fall in those conditions. The cold, the wind, the dark, the terrain. They believe D.B. Cooper is just a skeleton somewhere in the forest. But the Cooper dossier is full of anomalies. Why did he demand 4 parachutes? Was it to make the crew think he might take a hostage, ensuring they wouldn't give him sabotaged gear? How did he know about the 727's unique rear stair capability?
He wasn't a murderer. He wasn't a violent terrorist. He was a ghost who demanded a ransom, paid for his drinks, and disappeared into legend. He is the only case of air piracy in U.S. history that remains unsolved. In 2016, the FBI officially closed the case, moving it to the inactive files. The D.B. Cooper dossier is cold, but somewhere out there, the truth remains. Or it disintegrated with the $20 bills at the bottom of a dark river. Some stories were never meant for the light. But they are the stories that must be told. They are the files that must be opened. This has been a file from America's Dark Dossier. If you believe that the past is never truly dead, subscribe and help us open the next file.